welcome to The Sinner and the Saint. I'm Melissa Bell.
And I'm Allison Kane.
So, Allison got a taste of what life in Melissa's body is like, right?
I did.
She was on high alert, level 10 anxiety.
I don't even think it was anxiety. It was, a trip out of the country with children, many children, and other people. But I was just on high alert. It was like I was a Navy SEAL for a week.
Vigilante.
Yes, just vigilant in every corner, in every movement, just all of it. And I got home, and I think about the day before we left, my brain had just stopped working. I was slurring my words like when I woke up in the morning. It was just like...
So tired.
I was so tired. I couldn't think. And then the travel as well. Travel is exhausting too. And so every day I would have to take a nap for like 2 hours. I could do like a couple of things.
You could do a 2-hour nap?
Girl, I just brain tapped.
Okay.
I did that. I mean, it was, yes. So, when you're going into a situation, sometimes you don't realize until after the fact how vigilant you were and how on guard.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything specific I was worried about. I was just generally on high alert.
You were out of your comfort zone.
I was.
Guess what?
What?
We're turning the tables today.
Woohoo!
And we're going to talk about what happens when God calls us into something and out of our comfort zone.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
I don't know if this is going to apply to you, but we're going to try. So I was reading, and I do the Bible in a year. Mm-hmm. I think I've been doing this round. This is my second year through this round. Because I started a couple years ago. I did it one time fully through. And now I think I'm in like July or something. And I started it last year. But, since I'm not a rule follower,
great,
I don't have to check a box.
You shouldn't rush.
That's
a
right.
good thing.
And so how many of us know the story of David and Goliath?
Oh, since elementary school.
I mean, preschool, they have these little coloring sheets, right?
Yes.
Even I, the non-Christian, at one point knew about David and Goliath.
Exactly.
And so
such a good story.
It is a good story. And I was reading, it's in 1 Samuel 17 if you want to take a look at it. And if you're new to Christianity or this story, essentially there's this huge monster on the enemy side. I mean, ginormous man. And he would come out every morning and he would taunt the Israelite army. And imagine they're kind of like on either side of a hill or something. And he would stand at the top of the hill and say, "Who would dare come and fight me? Big, strong, massive." And the Israelites would cower and no one would go. And he did this, it was for 40 days. He stood on that hill and taunted the Israelites.
Such a biblical number.
Yeah, it is a biblical number.
Mm-hmm.
And no one would come until David. Now, David is a young boy, probably a teenager. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
And David just went to go bring his brother food or whatnot in the field. His dad's like, "Go check on your brothers." Because back then you couldn't tweet, you couldn't text,
right.
You couldn't whatever, you couldn't email.
Couldn't check your Snap map.
Yeah. So it was like, "Go check on your brothers." So he went to go check on his brothers. And he watches this happening and he's going, "Wait, what?" Looking at all these, huge army men, because now David was smaller than all of his brothers, and his brothers were the big warriors, and here this little wimpy shepherd kid comes, right? And his big strong brothers are hiding in the corner. He's like, "Is no one gonna go?"
He's like, "Bruh, what's wrong with y'all?"
Right. Anyway, so I got so many lessons out of this story. When God calls you to something, all the places that you're gonna get some smack talk from. Okay?
There's a lot.
Yes. And so I've come up with the first place you're going to get some smack talk if God calls you into something is from your close friends and family.
Oh, 100%.
I think this one hurts the worst.
It does.
Because you assume that they're going to be on your side.
Yes.
Right?
You do, but oftentimes it is a lot trickier with family.
Yes. And so
even Jesus had a hard time with family.
That's true. And if Jesus did, we're all going to.
Absolutely.
So all of you that had a really hard, like Easter gathering or whatever, that was just a couple weeks ago, Jesus had a hard time with his family too.
Absolutely.
In fact, at one point, he's like, "That's not my family."
Yeah. I was actually having a conversation with some Christian women recently, and they were like, I just feel such a burden to, share the gospel with my family and get them to become believers and just all this, like over and over and over again, every chance I get. And I'm like, I don't feel that burden.
Right.
And they looked at me like I had 4 eyes and 6 tails. And I said, I of course I want them to go to heaven.
Not my job.
But I understand that actually family can keep them.
Right.
I mean, I can keep them from coming closer to God because family has so much. I said I can live it out in my life and they can see it. And then I can pray that the Lord puts someone else in their path that will bring them to the Lord. But I'm probably useless. They're going to go the opposite direction if I try to push that on them.
They probably got the best night's sleep after that conversation.
I mean, maybe. Or they still think I'm a little crazy.
Well, she is. I'm here to tell you.
Maybe.
So David ends up, with the cheese and the bread that he was bringing. And David says to his brother, he says, wait a minute, who is this pagan Philistine anyway? He's allowed to defy the armies of the living God. This is little shepherd boy David.
Cutie patootie.
Taking stand for God. Like, wait a minute, what? We're not standing for God? And his oldest brother is always the oldest one, right?
Always. So bossy.
He was really rude to David. He said, what are you doing around here anyway? What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle. So he's already saying, like, first of all, David doesn't know he's on a mission yet, right? But
right.
His brother's already throwing shade at him. So he's telling him about him, that he's prideful and deceitful, and that his mission is really just to get into the middle of it, to get in the fringe, right? And by the way, let me remind you, you're supposed to be watching sheep.
Yeah, go on back to your little job.
So David just goes, wait, what have I done now? I only asked a question. So here's the thing. What does David do? He just goes and asks somebody else.
Yeah.
He's not listening to his older brother. He's been listening to that smack talk for a long time.
Exactly.
Right.
Don't listen to family.
So eventually he asks enough people that someone tells the king and says, hey, this guy's asking this question. Like, why are we allowing this pagan person to defy the army? And I'm sure the people were starting to feel a little bit of guilt. Like, actually, we probably shouldn't be allowing this guy.
Shouldn't be allowing this. Like, oh, why hadn't we thought of this before?
Right. Little punk. So they tell it to King Saul, and King Saul sends for him. And so now here's the authority. When you are doing something out of the norm that maybe no one else has heard God call you to, but God has called you to it, and you don't even know you're called to it yet, authority figures might question you. Mm-hmm. So
100%.
the people of authority, this is what Saul says. David said to him, don't worry about that Philistine. I'm going to go and fight him. And Saul says, don't be ridiculous. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and win. You're only a boy. Mm-hmm. And he's been a man of war since his youth. Okay? So now the authority is questioning David.
Yep.
Now, what are you going to do at this point?
I mean, me personally, I'm a little stubborn. I'm going to prove him wrong.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what I would do at this. I mean, I think now I would dig in. Mm-hmm. But when I was younger, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. I'm going to go eat some of that bread and cheese and watch the
maybe
show.
I'll just go sit down. I will say, this is when the story starts to turn and we begin to see that David, like they talk about in 1 Corinthians 10, it's not self-confidence because that's useless. He has God confidence.
Yes, and why does
he
have God confidence?
Which is totally different.
He only has it because guess what? He's hanging out with sheep and no one to talk to but God.
Yeah.
And so no one can take that personal experience of David from him. And so he knows that God has been with him personally, right? And so he actually says, actually, I've been taking care of my dad's sheep and goats. When a lion or bear comes, I go after it with a club and I rescue the lamb. And he's saying, the Lord who rescues me from the claws of the lion and bear is going to rescue me from the Philistine.
There you go.
Because he has personally experienced it. And not only that, but he has communed with God for how many years? Mm-hmm. By now, he's already written some Psalms.
Yeah.
And he has just spent all of his days probably picking grass and singing to God about how good God is.
And having his quiet time.
He was in the wilderness in his quiet time, focusing on who God was to get him through them long, stinky days of sheep.
It's so interesting. It reminds me of, like, I can see him sitting by the stream. We talk about, all scripture talks about God being the stream of living water, tapping into that source. And some people just stay on that mountain far away, and they may or may not see the stream in the distance, but they never find God. They never tap into that. And then some people locate the stream and may see it and may travel over to the edge of the stream.
Those are your people sitting on the front row at church sometimes.
Yeah, you're enjoying the view and you talk about it and all the things. And then there's a crew that might actually like walk over and take their shoes off and dip their toes in. But that's good enough. That's safe enough. But like David, he has gotten into that water.
He's whitewater rafting, baby.
He is completely let go, trusting God. I can just see him floating on his back down that stream, just trusting the Lord.
Yeah. And so that's why David confidently looked at the king of the Israelites that's supposed to be telling people to go fight him. He's like, I got you, man. And I think if I'm the king at this point, I'm going to be like,
whatever.
Let's go see how this works out.
Exactly.
Give me some of that cheese.
The king is using his little snarky attitude like, all right, boy.
Okay, big britches.
Let's see how this works out.
That's right. But then Saul says, okay, you can go, but put this armor on. Now, here's where it gets interesting because David is like, I can't use this armor. I'm not used to fighting this way.
Yeah.
So he actually shrugs off the protecting armor because he knows that he has been equipped previously with God to fight in just his little regular shepherd's clothes with his slingshot, right? He says, I can't go in these. I'm not used to them. So he just grabs his stones from the stream and a bag, and he takes off. And then he encounters yet another hater.
Hater's gonna hate.
So the enemy will talk to you and tell you about yourself and tell you about all your shortcomings. Because, I was thinking about this. There are two people that are the most aware of your negative self-talk. And one of them is not you.
That's right.
God knows how you feel about yourself, and the enemy knows how you feel about stuff. Now, the enemy doesn't have access to what you're thinking, but he can watch your actions.
Absolutely.
And he can hear all the things that you say to your friends, right? And so the enemy knows.
See the doubt in your eyes. You can see it in other people. He can see it in you.
That's right. And so David goes up and he goes to Goliath and he's like, hey, I'm here to fight you.
I love it.
And Goliath kind of laughs. He's like,
of course.
Am I a dog? You're coming at me with like a stick and some stones. And he says, David replies, he says, you come to me with sword, spear, and javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of Heaven's armies.
God confidence, people.
That's right. So David is like sneering at him, saying, come over here. I'm going to give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. And David's like, because of God, not because of me,
right.
Not because of my shepherd skills, not because of, how my great accuracy, which is like, I'd be like, let me tell you something. I am a sharpshooter, brother. You should see all the lions and bears. Nope. He just said, because of God, I'm going to stand here. And then he says, and everyone, when I defeat you, everyone assembled here will know what? Not my name. Will know that the Lord rescues his people. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give it to us. Not I'm going to give it to us. Thankfully, I'm here to save the day. He's like, nope, God is right here. So, of course, you should read the story if you haven't read it. He defeats him, and it's amazing. But think about all the negative talk that he had to go through from his friends and family, from the people in authority, and from the enemy. Yet he persisted. And
how did he overcome? It is because if you look at that story, there is no... Now, he was young, so he might have a little, He might
have had some arrogance.
But you don't get a hint of his arrogance. You see more humility and God confidence instead of self-confidence and pride throughout the story. I feel like there would be a snippet of some sort of window into that in Scripture. He was so reliant on God. He had such a deep-rooted connection with him. He knew that God would protect him. There wasn't a question in his mind.
Right.
He went through all of that because he knew without a doubt that was what God was calling him to, and that God would overcome.
Yeah, and when he showed up, he didn't know that's what God was calling him to, but
Right.
God started to reveal it. He had to go first with the bread. Well,
That's
okay,
right.
here I am doing this bread and cheese for the big people that are
And
so
then
important.
asking the questions.
Asking questions. And it kind of goes back to your conversation last week. What are you looking at? Is that what the
Right.
question was?
Yeah, what you looking at? What are you beholding?
What are you beholding?
He was looking right in the face of God. He was rooted in him.
Now, he doesn't really necessarily stay there all of his life as you go on into
Right.
David's story, but in the beginning, that's what he was focused on, and that's what held him up in front of everybody else. And so today you might be in a place where God is calling you to something that doesn't make any sense, or you may just be looking around going, this life makes no sense.
Yeah.
What is happening? And so
You got the wrong number. I'm pretty sure that I am not that person. Like, I am not the voice. I am not that is not my giftedness. But if he's called you to it,
that's right. And he may not have even revealed that to you yet. You just feel like you're in a place of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And so,
isn't all of life an uncertainty? If we look at it truly for what it is, we are never certain about what's coming around the corner tomorrow, what the next hour holds. We never know that. So all of life is uncertain. It's what do we do with that uncertainty? We put our trust, like David did, put our trust in God in this moment, his presence, and trust in his faithfulness.
And have you put your yes on the table? That's a big one. To put a yes, to wait for God to ask a question and then say yes is different than, God, whatever it is that you're taking me to, here's my yes. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
That's very different. And that's some uncharted territory for a lot of us. And so when you decide, if you decide that I'm going to put the yes on the table for whatever God has in store for me, not for this particular thing, but whatever God is doing in my life, I'm putting the yes on the table. You have to know who you are in God. Mm-hmm. And you have to know God's character and know who he is. And the one thing that David did is he referenced back to when God saved him before. So he remembered all the times that God had worked previously, which is why he could stand so firmly, and no one could take that personal experience away from him.
He knew his purpose. He knew his identity.
Yeah.
And it was all in Christ and for him.
And he started as a shepherd boy and then became a king.
Well, it was God at the time, not Christ yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, some things to ponder.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
Yes, we should all be God confident, not self-confident. We should all go farther than dipping our toe or observing the stream, observing him from the sidelines, or even just dipping our toe in, but just jumping right on in that water.
And knowing that you are going to have some smack talk from people around you. Mm-hmm. But as this girl, she's an author and she actually is a founder of It Cosmetics. Mm. And she says, not everyone is assigned to where you are going. Not everyone is assigned to your destiny. And so when people come at you with that negativity, just remember, not everyone is assigned to where you're going. That's from Jamie Kern Lima. So I really like what she says.
It'd be interesting to go back, and we don't have time for this today, but to consider each group that basically was Debbie Downer to them, to David. And the first group, being his friends and family, were probably feeling a little shameful, like, oh, here's this young kid who has a deeper faith than us.
Our punk brother of all things.
Yeah, our punk brother. He's got a deeper faith, and he's asking the questions that, oh my gosh, we're embarrassed we didn't ask. Uh-huh. And that we've put up with this, and we've got this little kid coming up, or this, asking us, like, why are you doing that? Why haven't we thought of that? So what were they experiencing? And then the king as well. Here you've got this little kid, and he's like, no. Like what was he thinking? What was his attitude? And what was the root of his, obviously, I mean, God uses the little people to overcome. It's kind of like the wolf pack. It's just interesting to look at all the naysayers along the way. And we know that Satan's going to do it no matter what, right?
He is the king of all naysayers.
So that when we come up against those people, we have more confidence in understanding where they're coming from. It's their own insecurity. It's their issue. It's probably not about you. And if you're confident enough in being rooted and knowing that God is calling you or trusting in him, then you don't even care what the other people are saying.
That's the beauty of it all.
It's the beauty of it all. Then all the other things, all the other comments, all the other negativity falls away, and the only thing is left is that God confidence.
That's right. That's where we all want to be. That's a sweet spot.
Woo, let's go for that this week. God confidence all the way. Thanks for joining us this week on The Sinner and the Saint.